Honestly, when I saw the trailer for Cry Macho, I didn't really feel much for the trailer. It kind of really didn't spark my interest. I saw that it was going to be in theaters and HBO Max, and I decided to check it out on HBO Max. My thoughts are next. Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Reviews with Ryan. Today I'm going to be talking about Cry Macho. This is directed by Clint Eastwood, stars Clint Eastwood, and also stars Eduardo Minette. So in this review, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I haven't normally done spoilers in my reviews. I'm going to do spoilers in this review, and I'm also going to reveal the ending. So if you have not seen this movie or you don't want to know the ending, I would advise not watching this review until you've seen the film. So the film starts off with Mike. He is a rodeo guy and he actually breaks his back and he retires and he can't do that anymore, and he becomes a horse breeder, and he ends up getting fired from his job. And then a year later, his boss invites him back and says, "Hey, I have a job for you. I want you to go to Mexico and pick up my son, Rafael. I miss him and I want to see him, and I want you to travel to Mexico and get him." So Mike, he goes down to Mexico, he gets in through the border, he ends up going to this mansion where the boys' mothers live, and he meets her, and she has this lavish lifestyle, and he's like, "Where's the son?" And she tells him basically that he's in a life of crime, and he does this and that, and he kind of does what he wants. So he ends up finding him at this place where they're doing chicken fights. And during this chicken fight, the police raid the area and everybody scatters and people are getting arrested and such. And the boy ends up hiding. And then Mike finds him and he tells him the news, "Hey, I'm going to bring you back to your father." And he seems kind of off-putting of if he even wants to do this. So then Mike goes back to his mother's house and he says, "Hey, I found him." She gets very berate. She's drunk. She threatens him, threatens to kill him, and has this awkward scene where she tries to advance him, which is really awkward because she's very young and beautiful and he's a 90-year-old, and it was a little off-putting with the scene. I really didn't really care for that part. And then he's like, "All right, well, I'm not going to take him. I'm going to leave." And then she orders her henchmen to go follow him. And then meanwhile, he's driving in the car, and then the son actually hides in his truck. And he finds him. They stop on the side of the road. They have kind of a bickering conversation. He's like, "Yes, I want to go with my dad." He's like, "I'm not taking you. Your mother's looking for you." All this type of stuff happens. And then he finds out that he steals his wallet. And they have this awkward conversation. Some of the dialogue in this part was really what would be said back in those times, because this is during the 70s, and this is based on a novel also. Some of the dialogue, I was like, well, I don't know if they would be saying this kind of dialogue back in the 70s. And that scene right there was a little bit much for me. And I just didn't really care for that dialogue portion of it. So anyway, he ends up agreeing to take him in his truck and take him to the border. And then during this drive, they kind of talk about being macho and being brave. And then he also reveals stories about his mother abusing and beating him. So then they end up at a restaurant and Mike phones Howard. He says, "Yeah, I have your son." And then meanwhile, the henchman shows up and he lies to the locals and says, "Hey, Mike has kidnapped Rafael." And Rafael is like, "No, that's not true. He didn't kidnap me." And then they beat him up, and then they leave this place, and then they find out that their truck is stolen and they have nowhere to go. So they pretty much are wandering down the road and they stumble upon this car. They take this car and then they end up at a cafe and they meet this woman named Marta, who agrees to let them stay for the night as they have cops searching for them. The following day, Mike finds out that Rafael and Marta, they're pretty good friends, and he tells them the truth. And then they notice that their car has a leak, so they have to abandon it. They then go to a ranch, and he kind of teaches him how to ride a horse and care for animals, and teaching him the good things about horses and such. And they have like a little moment here and there. And then they go back to the cafe and they have food with Marta's family, and they kind of talk and get to know each other and such. And then he gets a call from the father, Howard, and he says, hey, you guys have been in Mexico for 2 weeks. What's going on? When am I going to see my son? And then they leave the cafe and they start their journey to the border. So then they get a new vehicle and they're traveling, and then Mike kind of reveals to Raphael that, hey, your father is only taking you because he wants custody and he wants to battle your mother for money. So then he kind of gets angry about that, and then meanwhile they get stopped by the cops. They search their car. It seems like they're looking for drugs of some sort. And then they kind of make up this story that he's his uncle, and then the cops are like, all right, we'll let you go. And then Raphael gives the cops some money, kind of doing some bribery. They leave in that situation, and then they're driving down the road and they're kind of talking about how Macho is being overrated and, you know, make your own decisions in life. And then the henchman comes after him, runs him off the road and wrecks their car, and then he holds them at gunpoint, and then the chicken, Macho, jumps at him and pretty much tackles him. And Mike grabs his gun, they take the henchman's car, and they're running away, and then they meet the father at the border, and then the boy, Raphael, gives Mike the chicken. He keeps the chicken, and then he leaves with his father, and then Mike, he goes back to Mexico, and he meets up with Marta, and they dance, and that is the ending. So for me, this film, it was a very slow film. I didn't really enjoy the movie per se that much. I felt that the dialogue with Clint Eastwood, much respect to this man, fumbling over his words at times. Even Eduardo Minette, he was kind of fumbling over his lines at times. I also thought it was strange that Spanish is spoken in this, and there is some subtitles for it, but a lot of the times they're speaking Spanish and they don't even have subtitles. And I don't know Spanish, and it would be different if this was a Spanish film. I could understand why there wouldn't be subtitles, but this is not a Spanish film. So a lot of parts that they're speaking Spanish, I have no idea what they're saying. So that was one of my problems with this film. And then the cinematography, it's not too bad in this. I think it's shot pretty well. I think Clint Eastwood is a pretty good director, but I just don't know if acting is right for him at this point at his age. So with that said, I'm going to give the film a 1 out of 5. It just didn't really do a whole lot for me. I felt I was bored during it, and it just didn't have a lot of action. And I feel like this kind of film is going to have a certain audience. I'm not sure what kind of audience that is. Maybe, you know, somebody that enjoys like maybe like a Western and kind of a chill kind of movie. I felt like with the henchmen and the villains, they're not really that much. I felt that it didn't really make a lot of sense to me that pretty much the last 10 minutes, you know, they're kind of finally going after him and making a big deal that he's missing. And I felt that the resolution of the film, it has some interesting dynamics of what they feel to make your decisions and, you know, what macho means. I get that aspect. But overall, as a film and how the lines are delivered and how everything is set up, it just all seems like it's all been done in one shot, and it didn't really interest me that much. And even the trailer doesn't really interest me that much. I actually had very low expectations for this film. But thank you guys for watching this. I appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next review. See you guys later.